Hi, it's Dr. Steve from Misericordia University. Today let's take a look at some advanced techniques with ActivInspire software. In particular, let's take a look at how we can create a container that will hold one specific object, or right answer. Let's look at creating a container that can hold multiple objects, or right answers. We'll use keywords to make that happen. And finally, let's take a look at creating activities. That's one of the latest features provided by the Promethean Board, the Active software. So to start, let's look at how to create a container that will hold one specific object or right answer. So here I have a simple example. I have a box that's going to be a container, and I've got three possible responses from students. To make this happen, I'm going to open the property browser. Keep in mind, if you're using the primary look and feel, in other words, the version of this app for young students, that you're going to have to click on Tools over in your toolbox, and that's going to bring up those tools and browsers in the lower part of your screen. So at this point I have the property browser open. Notice that it's very context specific. If I click on the page itself, all of these items in the property browser are now referring to the page. If I click on one of the answers, now everything changed because it's specific to the answer, that particular answer. And here I have, I've clicked on the container. So let me start off with the container itself. So when I look at the container, and I can close these other pieces down so it doesn't get too busy. Notice the container says it can contain nothing to start. So it can contain anything. That's not very helpful because anything can go in. Normally it's either specific object or keywords. If we have one possible right answer, it's specific object. If it's more than one right answer that can hold in that container, can be dragged in that container, then it's keywords. So let's start off with one specific object. So what is the object? I'll click on the little button with the three dots, and I pick one of these answers. Say I choose answer number 2. Of course, I have an actual answer here. I just made it very basic. And now I skip over these pieces. The words is for keywords. Contain rule, it says completely contained. That's by default. That's correct. If I want to have a reward sound, then I say true. Notice I already have true selected. And then I have the possibility of selecting a sound. So when I go in, I'll look into sounds, and there are all kinds of effects and different sounds that are available. And I already chose the beam. Notice I've answered all of the appropriate items here, but I did not respond to the last, return if not contained. That's what I'm going to do with the answers. I can click on one answer. Now the answer is not a container, so I don't need any of these things that I've just responded to. But I do need that very last one, return if not contained, and say true. And that simply means that if this answer does not fit in here, if it's not supposed to, if it's not a right answer to go into the container, then the container will reject it and it knows to leave. So when you say return if it's not contained, so if it's a wrong answer, it should leave. We say true, it knows to bounce out. Now here's a quick trick. Instead of just selecting one, I can select all three of these answers all at once, go down to the container area. Again, I don't need any of these except for the last one, and say true to all of them. Now, click outside of that, and now if I take a wrong answer in, it will bounce out. If I place a correct answer in, there's my reward sound, and notice it stays in. If I took another wrong answer, it would also bounce out. One thing I've noticed, keep in mind that if you happen to try this like I did after just creating this, that there's an error, a little glitch that sometimes happens. I've never had it happen in the classroom, only when I'm in the middle of creating. For some reason, it gets confused, and maybe I'll drag answer 1 in, and it won't bounce out, it'll stay in there. Well, that wouldn't be right. But realize that only happens when you're testing during the creation phase. So if that does happen, don't worry, simply set it back, don't test it at this point, save it, close it. When you reopen it, it will work fine. Let's do one more example like that, because it doesn't have to be a basic example. Here I've got several animals, and I'm going to drag the appropriate ones into this graphic. And this graphic will be the container, it'll be the answer area. So as I did before, I am going to start off with the container. What can it contain? Property browser open. It can contain one specific object. So what's that object? Let's click on it and let's determine which one it is. Image 2, the frog, is the correct answer. Now, do I want to, so I skip over the keywords. The contain rule is by default completely contained, simply means the frog will have to be somewhere all inside of the borders here in order to be recognized. Do I want a reward sound? If I want that, then I'll say true. Then if I want that, then I'll say, well, what sound do I want? So I'm going to go and select nature. And, oh, not nature, I'm going to go and find some animal sounds. Nature would be nice as well. See if we have a frog. Sure enough, we do. And I'll put that frog sound in there. So the container knows that when the correct answer is dragged into there, play this sound. Notice I answered all of these questions minus the last one, return if not contained. I leave that as false because it's just not needed. When I click into these possible answers, again, I can click this as I did on the previous flip chart slide. I can select each one individually, or a little trick to speed things up, simply select all of them. I don't need in the container area to answer any of these questions except for the last and say true. When the student selects the appropriate answer, here's my frog sound, the frog stays in, and then the other animals will bounce out. Now let's consider creating a container that can hold multiple objects. To do this, we'll use the container once again. Now we have to add one layer of complexity, and that is keywords. We have to identify which of these possible responses are correct to go into this answer area, into this container. Once again, I'm going to open up the property browser. I already have it open. When I click on the container, now I can close some of these other pieces so it's not overpopulated here and gets confusing. Right now it says it can contain nothing. So let me say it's not one right answer now, it's multiple. So here's the plural, keywords. So I'll say keywords. Now it's going to say what are the words. So at this point, two different schools of thought that teachers use. Number one, I could say I'll put the word vowel and identify that for certain letters here. Or I can go in and say, you can take the A and you can take the E and the U, and in fact even the Y sometimes would serve as a vowel. So I could do it that way. In my case, for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to put the keyword vowel here as opposed to the keyword consonant. So here I am, keywords. I now get to specify what is or what are the keywords. Could be one or there could be multiple. So I'm going to say keywords, opens up the keyword editor, and it says, okay, what is one of these words? So I'm going to say vowel, and I'll hit enter. Now if I decided to say the letter A could be here, I could put A here, I would enter, and then I would create an E and so on. It's very important that you remember what keyword you put here, because we then have to assign this keyword to one or more of these possible answers. Okay, so here it says can contain word vowel, completely contained. If I want a reward sound, I can put it in. For now, I'll just skip that. And then I don't have to answer, I answer everything except for the last one, which would be return if not contained, because the answer area, the container, never moves. So there's no reason for it to return. As we did before, we can highlight all of the possible responses, go back to the container. I don't need to answer any of these questions except for the last, say true. So all of them have that. Now, here's the layer of complexity we add. We added a keyword in here, and here it is, keyword vowel. So let me go up to the very first response. Now I have to add one more piece in here. I'm going to close these other pieces down. I'm going to open up the identification area. When I open up identification, it says, for this particular response, for this answer, what's the keyword? So in this case, I'm going to go in and once again type the word vowel. When I type the word vowel, this keyword has to match the keyword that is to be contained as a proper answer in this answer area in this container. This is looking for the word vowel. When I go up to this letter A, I go up into identification. It contains the word vowel, so it will fit in here. When I click into the letter B, I go up to the top. Well, let me assign a keyword there. I'm going to add, and I'm going to put the word consonant. Make sure I spell it correctly. And just to be sure, because that's a larger word, I don't want to have an error as I type it. I'm going to do a Control-C on that before I hit Enter. I can now go to the other consonants, and I can very quickly now simply paste in that keyword. And I know that the Y could be a consonant, could also be a vowel. So I'm going to add consonant in there. Let me go back to the vowels. Let me put the word vowel in here. W-E-L. Let me go to the U. I'll put vowel in. So notice for every single possible response, I'm going to put an identification here for it. Now for the Y, I know it could be a consonant. I know it could also be a vowel, so I'm going to put two keywords for that particular response. Now the nice thing is, from a teaching point of view, once I create this, and if I use a robust system of putting identifiers in with these, I could change this and call this consonants later, and simply copy this flip chart slide, and then I would duplicate it, and then I would say, okay, now I'm going to do another thing with this. And then I would not have to change any of these answers. I would just have to go down to the container and say, okay, now what keyword should it contain? So it will be a more robust activity, and it means less work for the teacher if we reuse the same flip chart slide. Okay, let's do one more example of this. Oh, let me show it to you first. The letter A will fit in. The letter B bounces out. And the same with the others. Let's do one more example of this. I'm going to add to the example we did earlier. I've got several animals down here, and here's my answer area. Because the answer area doesn't have to be a kind of a boring box. It could be a graphic. So in this case, just like we did earlier, I'm going to start with a container and say now it's not one specific object, it's multiple. So keywords. Well, what are those words? Now in this case, I could come up with a term for all these swimming animals. I could say swimmers. I could say pond animals or something like that. Or in this case, maybe I'm just going to, again, to make it robust, I'm going to add the names of the different animals here specifically rather than a category. So I'm going to say the turtle can fit in here. I'm going to say that the frog can fit in here. I'm going to say that the fish can fit in here. So this container can now contain all three of these words. Do I want a reward sound? Then I'd put it in here if I chose. And I can answer all of these, and I don't need to answer the last one. The last one has to be answered. Oops, I'm grabbing a turtle by mistake. Let me highlight all the possible answers. Go down to the very last one under container. The last parameter is return if not contained. Say true. All right, now we have the task of adding one more level of complexity. We have to go up to the identification area in the property browser. So this is a turtle. I know that this answer area it's going to be looking for the word and can accept the word turtle. So let me go in and add turtle. I'm trying to be careful so that I make sure that I spell the keywords appropriately. If I don't, if I put like turtle versus turtles or anything like that, it will not be an exact match. It will be rejected, and that will throw off our activity with our students. Here's a frog. I'll add the identification to the frog. There it is, and say OK. There's my fish. So I'll add fish in here. Then I've got my cow, and I don't want to drag the cow in the pond. So the cow will be rejected. Not only is it a wrong answer, but also the poor cow will suffer in the water. So now I've got everything completed here. If I drag a right answer in, it stays. If I drag an incorrect answer in, it bounces out. Finally, let's take a look at creating activities. Activities are one of the latest features provided in active software. When Promethean started, they just offered the active software. Now they offer another product called ClassFlow. ClassFlow is an online product, and the nice thing is we can incorporate both together to create engaging activities that can be used for assessment and allow students to demonstrate their understanding of things, of content which we're presenting to them. And also, we can use it for drill and practice with our students. It's easy to create. I just have to find this in the dashboard. So I'm going to go up to the View menu and pull up the dashboard. And here we normally go into flip charts. And here is the entryway into the activities. When I click into activities, look at all these great engaging activities that are provided here. We can categorize, we can do crosswords and flashcards and matching and a whole bunch of great activities. The nice thing is when you create an activity through this ClassFlow portion, it's listed on the dashboard, we'll be prompted to save it. So we can save it as a standalone activity, which means that we can send this activity that we create, whether through our learning management system, through different software, through email. We can send it and give it to individual students to function individually. We can also embed this directly into or onto one of the flip chart pages, so we can do it as a class. So they prompt you to save it separately and individually, and that's why. So some really good activities we can do here. Let me just show you how easy it is to create one of these. I'm going to choose memory. So here's the memory activity, and I'm going to create identical cards. So here it's just prompting me to enter the first word that I'm going to use. So I'm going to choose for memory, the different types of activities we can do here, several of them, in the ClassFlow side of this product. So I'm going to say we can do flashcards. If I spell it correctly. I'm going to say we can do matching. And each of these is just as easy as this to create. I'm going to say we can do word search. I'll say we can do sequencing. And let me add one more to make it even. We can do a timeline as well. Now I'll just check everything else here. I can change the color in the background. I can change the color scheme if I choose. I can play immediately. I can also save. So I'm going to go ahead and save. and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to say this is activity memory. So now it'll be saved. And now it says I can play it once again, or I can add it to the page. So I'm going to add it into this page. And I'll close out of all this. So here's my activity memory. Notice that it's an action object. So if I click on it, take a moment to add it, to load in. And now let's say, let's play this game. And now we'll see how good my memory is once I start seeing where all these items are listed. Oh, timeline, I think I saw that before. Yes, I did. And now these will stay here. And it's keeping track of my time and how I'm doing and so on. I can also take this up to full screen if I choose. So what a great activity, which you can again embed right into this presentation. For lab time, based on this lesson, let's practice the advanced skills that we looked at here in this presentation, plus one or two other items from the past. Start by downloading the flip chart that I provide in this folder in Blackboard, and simply complete the tasks that are listed in the file. We'll start off by, I'm going to ask you to address pulling items out of a box. So I literally have a graphic of a box. I'm going to ask you to put some text in that box, some text boxes, and simply allow the student to be able to pull them out of that box. I'm going to ask you to recall how to create a link to a video on YouTube. I've created a Magic Ink Revealer activity, and I'll ask you just to make it happen, to complete it. And then I've got two container activities. The first one has one correct response. The next one has two correct responses. And finally, finish by creating an activity, as we just looked at, by selecting activities from the dashboard, and then save it and embed it onto a flip chart slide. Take care, and see you online for our next class.